You're very welcome to today's episode in our Work From Anywhere series. This is all going to be about kids' education and remote work and where this is all going to lead to. We've got a great group of guests. This is an area I myself am particularly passionate about. I've got 3 kids below 5, just after moving to Portugal in the last couple of weeks. So dealing with these challenges head on. And I think what also relevant last year, you might have seen in the previous episode we had on digital nomad families, that when we did a survey at the beginning of last year on Work From Anywhere, we asked people what were the biggest pain points. And for individuals and for companies, it was taxes, which is no surprise. But actually, when you kind of dived into that data in more detail for individuals, number 2 pain point was kids' education. But if you can imagine, not everyone who actually did that survey was a parent. So actually, for parents, kids' education, it is the number 1 pain point. So I'm really looking forward to today's discussion. I'm going to bring on our wonderful group of guests, Hope, Marcus, and Paul. And maybe, Hope, you could kick us off today, give us a bit of background to yourself. We just do a quick little bit of a short intros, first of all.
Hi, John. It's a pleasure to be here. Like you, I have 2 children, so this is an area I'm super passionate about. I've also traveled and become a global nomad of sorts. I think my husband and I figured out every 4 years we take a jump, and to our friends and families, sometimes dismay and sometimes they're just totally confused. We decide to completely change up our lives and dive into a new country, new work, and for our kids, diving into new schooling settings. So my background is really in entrepreneurship, in both my own businesses and for supporting other people. Over the past 20 years, I've been working in the sectors of education, food, nutrition, and ag tech, and well-being and health. And I would say that it's a really amazing place to see change happen. And in the past several years, I've been really focused on supporting people in both professional and personal settings to go through big changes. I've made tons of big changes in my life, in work, in lifestyle, and in my kids' education. So this brings me to work with businesses, CEOs, founding teams, entrepreneurs, freelancers, people who want to make some changes. And it's been really, really fascinating over the past 2 years. I'm sure you guys can attest. The speed of change has accelerated, and everybody's feeling it. Everyone's feeling kind of a step back, a reflection of, do I need to work at this pace anymore? How is my family work-life balance? Are my kids really fitting in the setting of school, conventional school? And people are asking a lot of questions and looking outside and inside for some new pathways. So it's been my pleasure to collaborate, work alongside, often roll up my sleeves and support them. And a lot of this is really leading me to the education sector because so much is happening. I'm really looking forward to talking with you guys. Boundless is something that a platform that I've been watching, and I'm super excited to hear more from Marco. And Paul is leading Cicero Learning, which is supporting my daughter right now on a self-directed journey of education. So over to you guys, and I really look forward to this conversation.
A great segue into Paul. Obviously, Paul, what you're doing with Cicero Learning, and I have to say, I've huge admiration for everything all 3 of you are doing. I've gotten to know you over, for all of your companies in the last year, and I think you're on the cusp of this explosion of innovation that's taking place in kids' education. And remote work will be certainly a facilitator of that. But tell me more about, Paul, what you're doing with Cicero Learning. Tell us what led you down this path. Tell us more about Cicero.
Well, what led me down the path? I mean, how much time do you got, and is there enough coffee? So, a little bit just about me. I'm an entrepreneur. Cicero is my second business. My first one was a travel business, and I've spent most of my adult life traveling or living abroad. Lived in Italy for a long time. My children were born there, so I was an expatriate, and we lived in that mode. And then for 7 of the last 10 years, I've been traveling as a digital nomad, but with kids. So a world schooler. And we live on a sailboat, so we've been moving a lot, sailing around the world. We haven't quite finished yet. We're in Cape Town, South Africa, so we're about 3/4 of the way. And so I've learned firsthand how difficult it is to educate your children while moving around, while being remote. And Cicero is the culmination of all that pain. We finally sort of figured it out. And the solution we came up with was hiring private teachers to work with our children one-on-one, sort of like the old-fashioned aristocratic tutoring model of, Alexander the Great and his tutor Aristotle. Although I don't think that my children are comparable with Alexander the Great, and I love the teachers, I'm not sure they're Aristotle level. But you get the idea. And we hit on this model a couple of years ago. It has completely changed our lives. It's changed our children's lives. It's accelerated their learning, and it's accelerated our evolution as a family in terms of the way that we live. And we thought we were really cool before we hit on Cicero, but it has had a huge impact, which I can go into more detail on.
Yeah, tell us more. Absolutely. What's the biggest impact it had on you as a family, Paul?
Well, so I got an email today from a teacher, not of one of my children, teacher of another student in Cicero. And I was asking her, what's it like? What do you like about this model? What do you not like? And this is a veteran teacher. She's got 30 years under her belt. She's a master level teacher, educator. But she's new to this. All teachers are, because teachers are used to teaching in a classroom with, projecting out to 20, 25, 35 kids. And she said the one-on-one model is a totally different, it's a paradigm shift. It's completely different. And she said it allows you to get to know the student and dive deep with that student. So, if you're an educator who's into, say, student-centered or child-centered learning, this allows that, this facilitates that. And so she's gone deep with the student, and she had a lot of great things to say about the student, being an exceptional learner, and she's really enjoyed it. She also said there's no place to hide, right? Like the student can't, whether they're hiding on purpose in a brick and mortar school or whether they're being hidden by the context. That doesn't happen when you're face to face for 45 minutes, diving into a text or working out math problems. She said it just, as for an educator, it's next level, and just allows her to hit a kind of a point in her craft that she was never able to hit in the classroom. And I read this email and I literally fell out of my seat because, I thought this was a pretty good idea, but now we're sort of putting the tire to the road, the rubber to the road, and we're getting feedback from families and students, but also from educators, and it's incredible.
Oh, congratulations, Paul. It's a huge, it's an illuminating piece of insight you gave there that really kind of opens the door into this one-to-one learning model and the opportunity that it offers. I'm curious just to dive on that just for one more kind of quick question on that, because I'm conscious I want to chat more as well to Marco about boundless. But do you find it's people that are exclusively relying on the one-to-one model, or is it also a lot of people that are using some sort of semi-traditional learning model in combination with the one-to-one learning model offered by Cicero, whether when they're traveling or whether when they're at home? I'm curious to dive about that aspect.
We're finding a variety, and so there are a few families who are going all in on Cicero. They want to do 5 classes at a time with 5 different private teachers. And we have a few families who are still in traditional brick and mortar school, and they want to add this on. That's a little bit difficult because brick and mortar school is all in. So it's kind of hard to pull a little out of school. Our sweet spot and the majority of our families are using Cicero for 1, 2, maybe 3 classes. And then they're finding other options. So, we live in an incredible moment in terms of options for families. There's online learning where you can sign up for a synchronous class. There's asynchronous classes. You can, really mix and match. There's a concept in homeschooling. It's been around for 10, 15 years called eclectic homeschooling, where you, as a homeschool parent, pick and choose different pieces and you kind of cobble together your curriculum. Cicero works beautifully with that. You can kind of pick and design one or two classes and then put it together with other stuff. That's actually how my family uses Cicero. My middle daughter has 2 classes with Cicero, and her other 3.5, she does another half course, are in other formats, and my youngest daughter does 3.
Fascinating, Paul. Absolutely fascinating. I mean, I really am still just trying to, at the phase of just wrapping my head around this, because my kids are basically all below 5. So this is not something that we need to urgently take a look at, but in the horizon, it's certainly something that's going to offer this insane amount of customization of the educational experience and have a holistic education experience that just can't compete with the traditional bricks and mortar approach. So very exciting. Tell me, Marco, very curious to understand more about you guys with Boundless and what got you to this stage, how it's going now. You're only up the road from me in Sintra in Portugal. That's where your first location, I believe, launched. How's it been going? What's the feedback been, and how did you get into all this?
It's been amazing. It's been much better than we expected, to be frank. And this individualized approach that Paul was mentioning is something that is really a core pillar for us as well. Even though we work with group ages and small classes, that really enables us to focus on the strength and also whatever the kid needs to improve. And we're getting amazing positive feedback from parents. We have some kids that, for example, have special needs and they could never fit in correctly in the traditional system. And they are now able to develop in a way that the parents said they were never able before.
Love it. And so the feedback has been great. What has been the biggest challenge for parents to get over, to buy into the concept of individualized learning, or this concept of boundless that you're offering? What has been the biggest hurdle for them to overcome to convince them to do it?
Well, I would say it's mostly understanding that what we are providing is something so unique that it takes some time for them to get their head around it. It's a turning solution, right? It's education, but it's much more. It's a lifestyle. We're providing a lifestyle. We're enabling families to seamlessly transit to this location-independent, nomadic life, or call it as you want. So basically, what we do is that to make sure they feel very comfortable with the fact that this is now available for them, and they can get a house and a home where it's fully equipped with families in mind. This is something really new. It's not a traditional short-term rental. That our education system, it's a real education system based on the Finnish system of education. But for the first time, it's available anywhere they go, in any of our destinations, of course. And that's really unique. You'd not, stock. And we get a lot of influence and inspiration from homeschooling as well, because you don't need to stick to this 10-month curriculum. You can, learn much more, actually, in fact, by working on projects. So it's very project-based as well. We leverage the UN sustainability challenges, and families coming to spend a few months with us, have their kids start and actually today they are presenting their project. I'm missing on this to be here with you guys, but I'll catch up with them later. So very entrepreneurial. They create their projects and then they learn the core academics through that. But the Boundless Life goes again beyond. It's the community that those families, and that's what we've learned now. One of the most important things for those families to feel comfortable to embrace this lifestyle. Are my kids going to be able to socialize with other kids their age? Where these people coming from? Do we, believe in the same values? Do we share the same values? So bringing all of that together with this community, with support, in a turnkey solution. It's really what we've been trying to make sure families understand and feel comfortable with. And when they experience it, the feedback has been tremendously positive.
Marcos, can I just dive in? When you say turnkey, where were you when I first started traveling with my children? My husband Charlie ran a travel company, or several travel companies. So he was organizing that piece. I was organizing a piecemeal of education. We would have loved the turnkey solution with younger children who we wanted to socialize, to have the school plug-in. I did visit your site in Sintra last November. And the fact that you guys have a community hub where you can co-work, which means that the parents are building connections and community.
Absolutely, that's another big
they're
piece.
doing like classes together, and also being able to connect with the community that they've landed in. You guys also sort out accommodation, which is another thing that was a pain point for us. So like the community pain point, the education, the taking care, I think there's some concierge sort of hand-holding that gets done. When my husband and I landed on Boundless, we were just too early. And so are you noticing that it's a lot of families who are taking a sabbatical or pressing pause on perhaps their corporate lifestyle? Or what are the families that are coming to you? What are trends or market that you've noted?
Actually, all kinds. And we really have all kinds. We have families that have started like you and come back to us and say, hey, this is really what I was looking for. I've been trying to do that on my own, and it's so difficult, right? And then we have this massive market that just realized that they don't need to live in big cities and pay big mortgage. They don't need to have 2 car leases and commute for hours every day. They don't only need to take 2 weeks of vacation per year or leave their kids in this archaic traditional education system that was developed 300 years ago to keep parents separate from their children. So that's a major market that is approaching us, and the more visibility they have on our project, the more we are attracting these. And during the summer and for the winter holidays as well, we'll be opening for families to come and try it out just for 1 month. You're replacing your traditional camp, or you're replacing your summer vacation with, what's it's like to live this life, and can I fully embrace it? And we believe that through those experiences, we are developing what we believe to be the lifestyle of the future.
So cool.
Yeah. So that part that you mentioned before is also something that we really enjoy, which is the collaboration between the parents in the community. We are serial entrepreneurs, advisors, and mentors for different startups and some major tech accelerators, and this is something we're very passionate about. I used to sit on the board of Junior Achievement, which is this international old massive organization which has the mission to help prepare kids for real life through entrepreneurship and financial education. So we brought all of that together, but what really it was like, we wanted to live this way. We wanted to live this lifestyle that we were living partially, but now we wanted to do with the kids, and we look for solutions that we couldn't find any as serial entrepreneurs.
You solved your own problem.
We solve our own problem, and we saw those major trends arising from all the situation that we've been living the past 2 years, and as the world will not go back to what it used to be, but now it's opening a lot of possibilities for people to have much more fulfilling lives, and that's our goal, is to help people have more fulfilling lives.
I love that. And what you really see coming across the common thread is all the people who are doing this, embracing this journey. There's a lot of common values, the sense of adventure, the kids understanding the local culture, getting experience of that, and that kind of more holistic educational approach. A lot of those values come through again and again, and having access to that community then, like you're talking about, is absolutely critical. I'm conscious that there's so many benefits to this possibility of remote work in kids education. just curious, looking at the other side of the coin, maybe hope you can answer this one, is what is the biggest challenge for parents and the kids, for people who want to remote work abroad and bring the kids along with them? What is the biggest challenge? I mean, obviously, finding the kids' education or finding a solution, which, looking at what the likes of Cicero and Bennett are doing, they're certainly addressing some of those challenges. But what is the big challenge? And what, from your experience, Hope, that you've seen?
Great question. I have been talking to a lot of people about this, and it varies a little bit, but I would say the main buckets of challenge are if I leave my existing paradigm or pattern, which I might not be thrilled about, and it might be somewhat crushing me, it's what I know. And I don't know how to go from the old model to the new model without a bit of hand holding. So who do they turn to for the hand holding? Because it is a real mindset shift. Even, Marco's talking about the lifestyle, or Paul living on a boat. My husband and I traveling around with our children for, a year here or there. To most people, that's a big stretch. So they're thinking about things like, if I leave my job, do I have to quit, or can I take a sabbatical? How do I work, as a global nomad if I've been in corporate for so long, even though I don't like corporate? And I would say that there's sort of logistical challenges, which is tax issues. And I think, John, now that I know that you exist, I can connect you with those people. And there's basically like, what do I do about housing? People who've lived in the same place, same city, same town, they dream of having more of a boundless life or going on a boat for a year, but they're like, I don't know what to do with my house. And then I think the concern of their child not liking something. And this has been a really interesting one to talk to with parents, is they want their child to try new settings, new school setups or platforms. They have an inherent knowledge that it might be better for their child, but they're concerned about their child sort of being ripped out of their old system, even if it's not working, and being put into something new, and that adjustment period. And I'm sure Paul could,
yeah, let's dive into that a bit more. I'd like to ask the three of this. So here's a question for you. Let's say you've got parents and a child who are, they're open, they're adaptable, they're agile, they have that sense of adventure.
Yeah.
But of course, we know that the traditional schooling systems in the likes of the US and UK and beyond, they kind of make it very difficult for you to kind of sample for a few months a different schooling system. You kind of either have to stay in that system or completely get out of it, basically. But let's say, for example, you are open to like a world schooling solution or something different, or like something like you're offering, Paul or Marcus, and you want to give that a go. One of the things I'm thinking that might be a barrier for some people is that, okay, let's say you're open to the likes of, for example, world schooling, and you want to do the homeschooling or world schooling, for example. But the challenge then is for the kids, you want to give them access to some bit of a community aspect or friends, for example, that they'll be able to see. And then you look at the concept of world schooling pods, for example, that could be a solution to it. How do you deal with that? If you are world schooling, if you are going to embrace that adventure, how do you, on the one hand, give them access to this open, new, customizable educational journey that the likes of Paul mentioned, and at the same time, try and give them some bit of continuity or stability or community aspects so that the kids have some friends that they get to know? How do you crack that? How do you solve that? And maybe it's not solvable, but I just thought I'd put that one out there. Feel free, any of you, to jump in on that one.
That's a really good question. I'll jump in first. You mentioned a lot of different things there, but kind of the big question is, I want to make a paradigm shift, as Hope described. It's a full mindset shift. It's a whole lifestyle shift. And I want my children to benefit from that, the positive aspects of change. But I also want some continuity. And you put your finger on the social aspect of continuity, but there's a lot of different pieces to it. And I think, the key thing for families is they've got to do a reckoning within themselves. Like, you're not going anywhere if your kids aren't on board, right? So it's like, it's a little different if you've got a, 4 and 5-year-old than if you've got a 15 or 16-year-old. But, certainly as they get older, you got to get buy-in. Your kids have to own the change as much as you are as parents. So, it's a marketing problem, right? How do you sell it within? But it's also a sort of entrepreneurial problem. Like, as a family, we are contemplating this. Not me as a father. I'm contemplating. I'm going to drag you all along.
Yeah.
I can't tell you how many sailing families I've met in my life where it's like the father's got this great idea, I want to sail around the world, and he's literally dragging his poor family along, and we meet the bedraggled wife and the kids who are like, I just want to stay. Yeah. On the social specifically, which I think is one of many problems to solve, right? There's the academic problem you have to solve. There's the change management problem you need to solve in your family. And then there's the social aspect, because, when you put your kids into a traditional brick and mortar school, you kind of get all of it. You're plugging into a traditional narrative. You live in the suburbs, you go to public school, you've got your social stuff all kind of built in, and then you delegate, the academics. Like, that's a good school, and I can see the kids go off to college, everything, and I can, like, that stuff's done, and I can go have my professional life. When you pack up and, rent out your house, hope the house is the easy thing, you monetize it, but you pack up and you go to Portugal or whatever, you've got to solve all of these problems, and the social is tricky. And to me, it's very different if you've got young kids versus older kids, which is why Boundless Life is so amazing, and I think will be a huge hit, because for the young kids, you can just plug right in. You've got community. The Finnish school model is amazing, so you kind of, it's a turnkey thing, as Marcos said. For older kids, they have a more expansive sense of social, and I think you have a lot more options there. So I'll just kind of tell you, like, my kids, I've got teenagers on board. My oldest daughter graduated from our boat schooling, so we've gone all the way through, and they have incredible social lives, but doing things in the places that we are, whether it's Muay Thai in Thailand or volunteering here in Cape Town. They do karate lessons, they do dance lessons, they do and they build social networks through that. So that sort of what you would consider in a traditional lifestyle, your after school activities, suddenly that doesn't just become a nice to have, that becomes integral to the whole picture you're building for your family. And we put as much weight on theater and dance with our children and everything else. Volunteering is a big part of it. We put as much weight on that as we do on the academic piece. It's all one whole child-centered thing we're cooking up.
I think tapping into that, Paul, I mean, I think it's reflecting my own journey. And, back in November, we were a lovely place you're renting in Ireland, and basically the owner said they wanted us back, which is perfectly fine. It was a big shift, and also we were kind of happy enough to live there for maybe another year and a half or whatnot. But then all of a sudden we shifted into what the heck are we going to do? And thankfully we'd already, traveled quite a bit. Like Rosa, she's 5 now and she's been to 24 countries. That'll give you a sense. But we were actually quite happy having a bit of stability for that period of time, especially with COVID. But then all of a sudden we shifted into, well, what are we going to do now? And then we looked at all the countries in the world. Portugal happened to be one of the ones we really liked. Then first thing we did is this was all literally within 2 weeks of that, all this happening, basically. First thing we did is just check out schools and jumped into the concept of looking at schools in Cascais. I jumped over here, found a great school, was very, very happy with it. And then basically arrived over about 2 weeks ago. But one of the things when you talk about the mindset, everyone keeps on saying to us, oh, you're so brave for doing this. Well done. I don't know how you can imagine doing this with 3 kids. But I think for us, it's very much a mindset. And I'm hearing that through all 3 of you, this mindset of embracing change, embracing something different. And actually, I love this as one of the neighbors. They gave this to us, lots of great neighbors back in Ireland that were beside us. But one of the ones gave us this one. And I like this, embrace the detour. What is it? Enjoy the journey and embrace the detours. But I think that's one of the things that for something like this, it feels like, Paul, that's in many ways the mindset to jump into this whole new horizon of kids' education and embrace the detours that are coming along with. There will be some challenges, but overall, it sounds like from all of you who have done this, that it's something that is incredible opportunity for the kids, I guess. I mean, that tapping into that, Marcus, I'm conscious of are you finding, like, what's the biggest surprise that comes out of this? How are the parents, how are the kids that are experiencing this journey with the likes of Bennett?
I wish I could give some negative examples, but I don't have that many. Literally, like what we're getting is, I'll give an example. My business partner, Mauro, has 3 kids, and the oldest one didn't want to go to school in Montreal. She literally would cry before going to school. And then she didn't want to come to Portugal because, it was a change. And then now we tell her, hey, let's go back to Montreal. And she goes like, no way, I'm not going back to Montreal. And we have other families that, we do that through cohorts. One of the cohorts is ending now, and they had to tell their kids like, well, we're going to another country now. Oh, but no, I don't want to, because, I really enjoy this environment, this community. And one thing I like to mention is, like, the community is not a closed community, right? Because a lot of people think, oh, you're creating this gated community or something, those expats all together. No, it's not. We are in the center of the town, and we have local kids around, and they're making friends, and we're making friends with locals. It's a village within a village, but very open. And that cultural immersion is also something really cool. They start giving a lot of value to that. And then, it takes the parents also to explain them how valuable that is for their own future. But just the experience is so amazing that they don't need that much convincing. We have kids now crying because they have to leave. So parents are like, okay, well, this seems like something we can do for a long time. And they decided they're going to stay with us for the next 12 months, maybe taking a break now, going back home for a couple of months, and then embracing that for the next 12 months. So I'm very biased on the community part because that's one of our biggest strengths. But I understand that can be more challenging for older kids. We have 18-year-old kids here with their parents, and those are learning from the other parents. We call it our kids. And many are entrepreneurs, and many are consultants, and they work on, they have their own businesses. And those older kids are really enjoying, hanging out with those adults that are so creative, so collaborative. And that's something we do in our co-working hub, for example.
I'm looking forward
I love that multi-age model. I think that Paul and I have spoken about this. I don't know if you see, John, when your kids are with different age groups of kids, and also when adults can be there, not just the teacher-student relationship, but mentors. And I think, we're talking about mindset shifts and family jumps and changes. I think the world is requiring some perspective shifts and shuffles. And I think that whether one takes a sabbatical for a year or 2 months, there is definitely a lasting impact on everyone involved. So I love that multi-age. I think that has lifelong benefits, Marcos, for sure.
When we start studying all the benefits of that, that's when it strikes how corrupted our mindset used to be, right? We thought that our parents go to work and we go to school, and then we have dinner together. And in here, the parents are fully involved in the education. They spend a lot of time. We have dedicated time for parents to give classes, and they come, it's we call endeavor time, and they participate in it. So everybody's really learning together, and then strengthening relationships with their own kids in a way that this more tribal lifestyle, which is our natural way of living, not how the system has, programmed us to live, comes back to us as human beings, and we realize, hey, this is how we're supposed to live. We're supposed to live together and exchange and learn from our parents more than from anybody else, actually. The educators are just there guiding and giving support, so parents can also work and do other things.
Love it. I liked your comment as well, Paul. Just reading some of the chat, you were saying as well that connecting with the local culture and the place is absolutely critical.
Yeah, I mean, if you're going to go to all this work, that heavy lift of the mind shift, and getting rid of the house and everything, a key piece of it is you're going someplace, and you want your kids to get connected to the local culture. And sometimes it's not easy. I mean, if you've got a turnkey solution, that's fantastic. I mean, Marcos, I'm just getting more and more impressed with Boundless Life every minute that this program goes by. The fact that you've woven it in is spectacular. If you're doing this on your own, or if you're, shopping for something like Boundless Life, I think it's a key piece of the puzzle is how much are my kids going to get connected to the local culture? And there's a couple of hacks that you can do. One is you can find programs to enroll them in, local programs. For example, volunteer programs. Like my kids, my middle daughter did a volunteer program here in Africa where she went off to Namibia for 3 weeks. And to Hope's point, her peers in that program, she's 17 years old, her peers were 17 to 25, and they were from Germany and Belgium and Brazil. So she got a real life, exposure to multi-age and, type of community. You can also do things like connect with places like Conservation International or, Seakeepers. It does coral restoration. There's a million different programs out there that are welcoming to families to come in, and it can be a hack to get your kids into this, and then they can connect with multi-aged peers and start learning, to Marcus's point, start learning from those people. And it's part of that ed stack, that family ed stack that you're sort of putting together, as important as as an academic piece. And I'll make one more comment just on the multi-age thing, because I think it's a key part of I don't want to, just beat on traditional education too much, but it's part of what's wrong with the system and traditional education. And it never again in your life are you ever put into a room with everybody I'm 52 years old, who's 52 years old. The rest of your life, you're working with people who are 50, 60, 70, 80, 20 in their teens, right? And Montessori education sort of gets this. That's why they mix kids across ages, and they do that intentionally. And I think when you work from anywhere and you move to a remote lifestyle, it opens that up in a way that you actually don't have that back in your traditional life. So it's just one of many opportunities that you have in front of you.
Well, there's one you mentioned there. There's so many aspects that I wanted to talk about there as well. But one of the ones that jumped out, and reflecting back on my own experience, is that when we got that news back in November, we had to try and pick somewhere to go and try and find a place that would be, have good education. So one of the reasons we came here to Cascais in Portugal, it's quite close to Lisbon, but you have you have what you call the traditional model, where it's just pure local Portuguese schools, great schools. Then you have what I call the expat model, where it can be the schools on the traditional, Cambridge or whatnot, education system. But then there was a school called Aprendices, which is basically what I would call a hybrid school. So what they do is they speak Portuguese in the morning, they speak English in the afternoon. It's all run by Portuguese teachers, immersed in the local culture, very outdoorsy. They mix the different ages at a young age. But that's a different model. It's also on the Cambridge education system as well. So you still have access to that to be able to move around. But it was quite unusual that a school that give you access to that international education system, but at the same time being very much immersed in the local culture. But on top of that, then you've got Boundless here as well around the corner. You've also got Brave Generation Academy, another very interesting model. Obviously in Cicero Learning, I don't know, I presume you can get some teachers close by here as well in Portugal, I'm guessing, Paul, and many others besides. So it's like this hotbed of kids' education. That was one of the things that when we looked at different countries around the world to move to, that actually there's not it's not like there's like 50 different countries or 100 different countries where you can go around and plug and play with education. You are, this industry is still at that kind of early stages, I guess, where there'll be a tremendous burst of growth, I'm guessing. Would you sense that as well? Do you sense that, the industry as it is now and where it's going to be in 5 years' time, how do you see that playing out? Maybe all three of you, I'd like to ask that question to. And here, I'll send the link to Aprendices as well here, Tony.
Yeah, I'm heading to Portugal next week for that very reason. It is a hotbed of entrepreneurship, innovation, and education disruption. There's so many cool models. And I would say I've got literally my fingers in so many different possible programs that are popping up around the world. and each one is slightly different. It's kind of not a Wild West, but there's a lot of things being tested and tried to replace the old paradigm. And I find it's really helpful to provide people with as many examples who are looking, because they might just land on one and say, you know, homeschool's not for me, or global nomad's not for me, because I saw that one program and it's not a good fit. But I would argue, you know, do a bit of homework, and there are lots of models popping up around, each with its own sort of angle and approach. And there's a lot of amazing outcomes for kids. And I'm happy a little bit later to chat about what I'm seeing in my own teenager who's participated in some of them.
Just seeing Andreas here as well. Andreas was one of the guests in our last episode that we had on Digital Nomad Families. Great speaker. He was there with Kate Schiffman from the Family Workation as well. I have such admiration for all of you who are the leaders in this space and are forging this path ahead. I'm so excited to see where it is going to land. But how would you see it as well, Paul and Marcus? Where would you see this landing in the next 5 years? Where is it all going to shake out?
Well, I think that it's important to for parents to embrace the fact that, you know, today is a reality, and that homeschoolers, for example, are succeeding tremendously. You know, there is a lot of data around that. So trusting that it's possible for kids to succeed in different ways, and all depends on what is the definition of success, of course, right? But if you compare, for example, if you look into some data, we know today that kids that homeschool have higher acceptance rates in Ivy Leagues, if that's the definition of success for you. And I was very surprised when I saw that at first, when we start to build our own program. We needed data to reinsure parents, because many questions go around, hey, what if I want to go back to the traditional system? What if my kid want to go to university? What if, you know, I want to put them in a traditional high school later? And we say, look, they're going to be even more prepared or better prepared than most kids. You know, it's already pretty much a fact. Now it's all about, you know, trusting that that's possible and taking the leap.
And speaking of taking the leap, then, Paul, you know, there's so many options here. Even for someone like me that's getting more and more into this and trying to understand it, and be speaking to so many people over the last year. You know, where do you start as a parent or as a family? You know, you've got homeschooling, you got world schooling, you got location-dependent schooling. You know, you've got the hybrid approach, you've got the one-to-one. Where do you start? Where did you start, and where does somebody start now today?
Yeah, well, I started back in 2014, so there weren't as many options, which on some level was a good thing, because, you know, now things have exploded and too much choice can be dizzying. I mean, first of all, I would go to Hope's newsletter and her website. She really is a maven and connector in this space. In a relatively short period of time, she knows everybody. She's kind of looked at a lot of these different formats, and she's sharing some great information. There's a bunch of smart people on Twitter about this space, John Danner, John Tan. And there's a bunch of great Facebook groups for homeschooling, world schooling. So I would kind of educate myself. That's the first step, and sort of throw myself into all of that, gather information, start to structure it, and start to structure it around, you know, what my goals were. Marco said before, like, what does good look like for you? Is it acceptance to a great school, getting your kid into college? Is that what, you know, you're aiming for? Is it that, and maybe also like your child's, you know, are they inspired? Are they leaning in? Are they happy? Are they becoming lifelong learners? Is that what's important? Figure out what your goals are. And then you also have to figure out, like, how does my lifestyle change impact that? For example, am I going to move to Portugal and have a turnkey solution with Boundless Life, or a couple of years from now, wherever campuses you have? Or am I going to go it alone and, you know, live on a mountaintop in New Zealand with a great internet connection, and you know, do something else, dial up some Cicero classes, this sort of thing.
Paul and Hope and Marcus, I mean, is there a website I can go to that can say, I mean, I've heard about you guys from doing all different research and speaking to people like Hope and whatnot, but is there a website I can go to find out, what are all the providers in different countries or whatnot? because I mean, more people need to know about Cicero Learning and Bennett. It's that simple. And I think it's just that. I'd love if there was one place you go to find, okay, what are all the different options? My kid is this age. I'm looking to go to this country. Where are my options? What can I do? You know, because I think there's more people need to be more aware of all the great work that people like you guys are doing. And likewise, you Hope. I mean, you being that mixture of a connector and as somebody who's experienced this and has lived through this change and can advise people as well on different solutions. You know, I think if there's any websites you can recommend, please feel free to let me know.
I will. I've got a bunch, but just for listeners, Progressive Education, which is Joe Symes. She's focused mainly on the UK, but she's got, actually, Marcos, you might want to check it out just for some statistics and research as well. She's amazing. Over the pandemic, mother of two, realized that, oh my goodness, there are other options other than conventional schooling. And she took it upon herself to create this incredible umbrella website, which contains white papers, research, programs, mainly in the UK. It's very sort of European focused, but she does have research that extends beyond. So I would definitely list that as one central hub. But John, there needs to be a website. We'll just have to get someone on that.
Yeah, no, completely agree. And if anyone ever does come up with that, I'd be happy to try and throw all tips and everything that I've seen in it as well.
The two other places.
Go ahead.
The two other places that I would recommend, and these are less structured than Progressive Education, there's a really good Reddit group for worldschoolers that's pretty active and people post there. And there's a lot of Facebook groups, but the best one, in my opinion, is Homeschooling for Middle and High School Facebook group. So very plain Jane name. And you have a good group of kind of just general, I mean, homeschooling can sometimes get a little tricky because the pioneers in homeschooling were largely Christian people who wanted to get out of secular education. So you have a lot of that. Yeah. But that Facebook group is pretty good. It's secular, and there's a pretty great sharing of information there.
I wanted to say that it's super important to get examples out there into the world. I think for families to look at websites and to see tools is one thing, but if they can hear people's stories and the outcomes, there's often the concern that parents, like Marcos was saying, like, well, if I do this, what if I screw up my child's future? Or what if they don't like it? The best advertisement for Paul's program are his children. When I saw his children and met them, and then anyone else who's taken a different track of self-directed or homeschooling or boat schooling or anything different, I want to meet their children. So I think that we need more examples. I know for myself, I'm going to be pulsing out interviews and actual real life examples of kids and their families and what they're noticing in how is this impacting them? How do they feel like this track that they've chosen, a mindset shift, a change in the way their families have a dynamic with each other that Marcos, you said too, and Paul, it's no longer, segmented, compartmentalized, it's integrated. And it's also looking to how are we learning for life? Learning never stops. And I think it's, of course, fun to take a sabbatical. It's great to travel with your kids, but any of these choices will make an incredible lasting impact on children.
Oh, completely agree. You've hit the nail on the head there, Hope. I love that way you've tied that off. I'm conscious of time now. It's been just such an inspiring conversation. These conversations, this one in particular, just flew by. Last question for each of you, and maybe Hope you can kick us off on this one. You can go anywhere with your kids in the world as a family. Where is it going to be and why?
I'm gonna steal your thread, and we would love to go to Portugal. There is really amazing magic happening in Portugal. I feel it's accessible, it's well located. The Portuguese people, culture are incredible. And I think there's just so much happening in terms of entrepreneurship, work opportunity, and more importantly, there's every school setting you could possibly find. So yeah, that would be my choice.
Great. I'm looking forward to catching up with you when you do come over, hope in a few weeks. What about you, Marco?
Well, I'm biased, but I have to say that before launching Boundless Life in Sintra in Portugal, we studied more than 100 towns, right, to develop this concept. And we believe we really nailed it. And the family say, hey, you guys know this place is so perfect for that how are we going to find other places like that? But we studying a lot and we use a lot of data to find other locations like that as well. But Portugal has, everything it takes as a first step, especially, everything is facilitated, it's safe, it's culturally rich, beautiful nature, the population, again, very welcoming, affordable. So I have to say I would start here for sure.
Remind me, Marco, as well, with all of you, by the way, I've put together a really kind of a heavy enough database of every country in the world across multiple different dimensions: healthcare, kids' education, safety, security, taxes, and everything. And I have that for every single country, basically. That's one I'm happy to share with you afterwards of how I looked at it to come to the decision to Portugal as well. But you also have great tools like Nomad List as well. Nomad List is fantastic, but it's missing a little bit that kids' education. It has one filter in there. I'd love if they developed that a little bit more. I think it's a fantastic tool, great community, I would say. But if there's any other communities like that you can mention, feel free to share with us. We can put in the show notes afterwards. How about you, Paul? You can pick anywhere in the world with your kids. You literally can go anywhere in the world. You're there to boat. I'm so jealous of you. I don't get jealous. I'm jealous of you off on your boat with the kids going anywhere in the world.
Well, I'm in Cape Town, South Africa right now, and it's a great place to be, and a great place to be with kids and to be remote learning. I know where I'm going. So next year we're going to sail across the South Atlantic. So I'll be working remotely, and my kids will be learning when we're in Namibia, and then in a little speck of an island in the middle of the South Atlantic called St. Helena, and then on up to the Caribbean. But if I could pick, if I was like on a, eco-friendly, sustainable rocket ship and could just go anywhere, where would I go? I mean, there are places that we've been that I would definitely return to. New Zealand, Raja Ampat, places that I've been and never taken my kids to, like Greenland. But we are, as a family, I've talked a little bit in this show about sort of having family goals and having really robust conversations as a family about what we are trying to do. One of our goals and our focuses as a family is we're adventurers. We want to always kind of go someplace new, meet new cultures, and challenge ourselves. So I would pick a place we've never been to and that we're all intensely interested in, and we were headed towards when the pandemic shut everything down and pushed us westward across the Indian Ocean, which is we were going to go to Japan, and we were going to spend a bunch of time in Japan. And I've met people who've lived in Japan for periods of time, people who've done some world schooling in Japan. It's not set up like Portugal. There's not a boundless life there. And it's quite a challenging culture because it's very Japanese, it's not English. But I think our family would just go, would love it. We dig in deep, and we could bring our model of what we do and do it there in a robust way. So Japan.
Definitely on our roadmap.
Love as well. Listen, good luck with it all, Paul. Good luck with everything you're doing with Cicero. Marco, good luck with everything at Boundless. I'll be definitely looking to catch up with you guys for a coffee and see the setup in Sintra, and looking forward to catching up with you over the next couple of weeks.
Can't wait. Thanks,
You've been
John.
absolutely fantastic speakers. You've given us so much food for thought. What I love about this is it's practical. All of the advice is practical solutions, practical advice. I feel like somebody new coming into this would get so many tangible next steps to really think about for themselves, for their family. And you've been a wonderful group, really inspiring. Thank you so much.
Thank you. It was a great pleasure.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thanks for having me, John.
And reach out when you guys coming around Sintra.
Great to meet you, Marcos.
We will, for sure.
Hope to meet you. Bye-bye.
I hope.
Thanks.
Take care.